Hi everyone, and welcome back to my Intro to Sewing video series. This is part 3 of things I wish I knew when I started sewing. So parts 1 and 2 are linked in the description down below, so definitely go check those out if you haven't already. Today is all about sewing machines, so I'm going to talk about some of the different parts of a sewing machine, how they work, and a few tips for troubleshooting your machine when things aren't quite working right. Just a reminder, this is recorded from my live stream over on Twitch, so that's the reason for some of the formatting at the beginning. So without further ado, let's get into it. Sewing machine parts. You could spend a lot of time looking at just the parts of the sewing machine. I've got a little diagram here that's just a very general one, but really every machine is a little different and it looks a little different. So your sewing machine's manual is really your best bet here. You really want to look at your sewing machine manual, and there will be a diagram specific to your machine, and it will tell you what all the parts are called, and basically how to thread it, how to wind the bobbin, how to do everything with your machine. And if you have lost your sewing machine manual or it didn't come with one, most of them are available online. Like if you Google the model of machine and manual, it'll be there. I've definitely downloaded PDF versions of manuals before. So I know it's kind of a very boring thing to say, oh, read your manual, but it really helps like when you're first starting. But one specific term that's gonna come up a lot on various things is the bobbin. So the bobbin is the little it's like a small spool, and basically you put some of the thread from the spool on the bobbin, and the bobbin then goes underneath. So in what's called a bobbin compartment or bobbin holder. So the bobbin thread is what comes up from the bottom, and then the spool thread comes down from the top, and then those two interlock, and that's what makes your stitches. Okay, a few more sewing machine terms, because the hardest thing when I first started sewing with the sewing machine was like, it's not working, like something goes wrong with your machine and it's not working and you don't know why it's not working. And then you try to Google it, but you're just like, the thing isn't doing the thing, and that's not helpful. So you're not gonna get results. So some terms that are kind of helpful to know is that whenever a sewing machine kind of locks up, or you get that like nest of thread that's all tangled up at the bottom, or just generally is not working correctly, it's called a jam. So if you Google like, why is my machine jamming, you'll get some tips on like how to prevent that or how to stop it from happening. Skipping stitches are when the machine doesn't complete every stitch. So it basically, the needle may go down, but it doesn't catch for some reason, and so it just basically skips over that stitch. So there may be like extra spaces, or the thread may look extra long in certain places. It just doesn't look right. Another thing is tension. So when you thread the needle through the machine, it's held in tension. And when your tension is off, it can cause all kind of wonky problems with your stitches. And so that's a term you may see come up, especially in tips of, hey, this isn't working, what's wrong? They may say, oh, well, your tension may be off. But usually that's a last resort. The most helpful thing I ever learned about sewing machines specifically is that when it's not working correctly, the first thing you do is take the thread out, take the bobbin out, take everything out, and then rethread it and try again. Because a lot of the time, something as simple as rethreading the machine will fix it. If that's still not great, if that's still not working, you may need to clean it. So dust and like lint from this fabric accumulates in the machine. So you can clean it, and your manual will tell you how to clean it. But basically, I usually go in there with like a Q-tip or something and try to like get the dust out as best I can, and that can help. The other thing is oiling your machine. Sewing machines do have to be oiled, and you can buy specific sewing machine oil at the fabric store, and then your manual will tell you how to oil your specific machine and how much to use and all that. So every now and then, your manual will tell you how to oil it. It kind of varies. You don't have to oil it like every use or anything, but if you notice it's just kind of not running smoothly, it may need to be oiled. Sewing machines and sewing machine parts When I taught the class live, I had a few questions about that. I have 2 machines here though that I'm just going to walk you through the general anatomy of real quick, just to kind of give you an idea of where to get started. So this is my Singer Simple Sew. This is a fairly basic machine. At the time I bought it, I want to say it was like $150, something like that. It's fairly inexpensive, especially if you catch it on sale. But the basic parts, you have your stitch selector here. So you can select straight stitch, zigzag stitch, any kind of stitch that you might need. And there's not a ton of stitches, as you can see. It's really just, you have a black line and you have a blue line. And then this is the length of your stitch. So if you select a straight stitch, for example, it's just a dotted line. So the length is going to increase the length of those dashes effectively. You can do a longer or shorter length. I usually leave it at about a 2.5 or a 3 as kind of my standard length. This machine doesn't have kind of an indicator, but some of them will have kind of a default length, which is supposed to be the medium-ish. Mine has the width on top. So you can see it says width and it has a little illustration. When you're doing a straight stitch, the width does not actually do that much. What it does do is move the needle. So it's a little hard to see down there. Let me see if I can get you a little closer, but on a straight stitch, when you are moving the width, all that's doing is moving the needle to one side of the foot or the other. So when I'm doing a straight stitch, I usually just leave it in the middle setting, which is like 2.5, but it'll indicate which one is the middle, because having the needle in the middle of the foot just helps me. Now, if you are doing a zigzag stitch, and it's kind of indicated by the little diagram up there, but if you're doing a zigzag stitch or any other kind of stitch that has some width to it, increasing the width will make it wider. So you can go all the way up to a 5 on this particular machine, or all the way down to a 0. Typically, I can't really think of many cases where you would really want a 0 on a zigzag or other type of stitch, but it's there. The other thing we have is the tension, and this one kind of got bumped, I think. But the tension is something that comes up a lot in sewing machines, and it's kind of a confusing concept. But essentially, the tension up here is just how hard this top thread is pulling on the bottom thread when you're sewing. So typically, when you have a sewing machine, there's going to be kind of a default tension range, and you really just need to do average tension for most thread and most materials. But you may find some materials you have to adjust the tension. I could go more in depth on tension, but it's really case by case what you need to do. When you're first starting out, I would recommend just going with a medium tension and seeing how that goes, basically. The other features we have on the top of this machine are the bobbin winder, and every machine kind of has a little diagram on top that shows you how to thread it. So on this particular machine, the thread goes here. There is also, I believe, an attachment for it that can make the thread go over here, but I just use this one. And then you want to there will be a little cap that comes with your machine that'll look kind of like this, or you might have a smaller one, something more like this, that just holds the thread in place. And you always want to have the thread so that it kind of goes under the spool towards you. That's just what I've always been told. Again, read your machine manual. It may tell you differently. And then you can see there's kind of a diagram here that tells me where to put the thread. So I want to go through this little hook and kind of snap it into place. Now, if I'm winding the bobbin, I'm going to come around this little guy on top, and it'll kind of hold it here, and then come over, and then go through the hole on my bobbin. So you push this post over, you put the thread through the bobbin, and then you will push down on the presser foot to wind said bobbin. And it will basically stop when it gets too full and it's pushing against this little bit here. I don't have this one plugged in because I didn't need to for the explanation. I'm not going to wind a bobbin right now. I have one ready. So if you are threading the machine to sew, instead of going through this guy on top, you'll come through the hook, same as before, come under here, and this is what the little piece that holds it and gives you tension. So I usually give it a little shimmy. I don't know, I read somewhere when I was first starting that that helps, so I do it. Just kind of helps it grip. And then you're going to come down here. You can see there's arrows that tell me where to go. So it goes down, around the bottom, and then back up on the right side of this little metal arm. And the metal arm has an opening at the back, so you just go around it again, and then come down, and it'll hook through this little hole here. And you come down again, and this is where we now can put it through our needle. So on the needle, there's another little part here that kind of holds it in place. So kind of slip the thread through there, and then you can put the thread through the needle. And there are machines that thread automatically. There's also little tools that you can get that will help you thread your needle if you're having trouble with it. Just look up like needle threader tool. They're not very expensive usually, but that's our machine threaded from the top. But now we have to put the bobbin in place. So this machine is a front loading machine. So there is a bobbin case down here. It's a little dark in there, but I hope you can see. But there is a little metal piece that pulls out. It looks like this, and this holds your bobbin. It's known as the bobbin case. It'll focus. And you put the thread in the bobbin case and hook it through. And then that will hold your thread. And it should kind of slide a little bit when you like drop it, but it should not be just sliding freely. And then you put the bobbin case back in. And now our bobbin thread is down here, but we need the bobbin thread to be up here so we can sew. So I always take the top thread and kind of hold it off to this side with my one hand. And then I'm going to turn the knob on the side of the machine. Always turn it towards you, by the way. So I'm going to turn it towards me one full rotation. And you can see it's grabbing that bobbin thread and pulling it up. And then I just take my scissors or whatever, and just trying to grab that thread and slide it off to the side. So now we have both our bobbin thread and are in the same spot. They're both there. You want to make sure that your top thread is going through the foot and under, and then you want them both towards the back. And you want to make sure they have kind of a long tail, and you may need, when you first start sewing, to kind of hold onto those back here, because they can have a tendency to kind of yank through the needle as you start sewing, and I'll show you why, because as the needle moves, it just has a tendency to pull that thread through, and then it can pull the thread out, and you think you're sewing, and you're not actually sewing, and it's very frustrating. Another sort of sewing machine term to be aware of, I think I covered this in the little term section, but this is the foot of your sewing machine. There's different types of feet, and they will come off. So there's usually a lever at the back of the foot arm, I think it's called, at the back of this little post. There's a lever, and you push it, and the foot comes off. And if you place it, usually your machine will come with several, but there's different ones for different applications. I don't know what this one's supposed to be for. I just know that it's clear at the front, and I like that because that helps me see what I'm doing. You can get all clear ones. Like on my other machine, I had a 100% clear plastic foot, and then to put it back on or put a different foot on, you just hold the lever down, press it up so that the little bar goes up into the slot, let go of the lever, and then it's on there. And that's it. Some other features of the machine, probably should have mentioned before. This one, there's a little drawer that comes with this one, and I'm sorry for the noise, but it just slides on the front. Yours will have a different kind of configuration. You can leave that on while you're sewing or take it off. I kind of prefer to take it off. It really is up to you, but you do have to take it off on a front loading machine to be able to get to the bobbin area. So that on the side of the machine is the knob, and this is what controls the needle. So you turn this, always turn it towards you, like I said, or try to. If you need to turn it backwards just a little bit, that's okay, but you don't want to consistently turn it a full rotation backwards, because that will cause jamming and tangles and weirdness. So as I'm turning the knob, it moves the needle. You can see that's what controls the needle manually. If you ever need to just manually pull the needle up or down, this one does not automatically pull up when you stop sewing. Some electric machines do. So you will need to turn the knob to get the needle out, basically, of your project. Another important little bit is the reverse lever. So it says reverse. Basically, when you want to sew in reverse, you hold that down, and as long as you're holding it down, it will sew in reverse. And the reason you would do that is for backstitching. So I think I explained earlier what backstitching is, but basically you just go backwards a little bit and then forwards again, and that helps secure the start or end of your line of stitching. So now the other one's out of the way. I'm going to show you my other machine, which is a computerized sewing machine. This is a Brother. This is the limited edition Project One-Way version, which means it comes with all of these stitches. This one obviously does a lot more stitches than my other one, but you can see when I turn it on, it has a display here, which you can select the number to set which stitch you're using. And you can also set the length here and the width here. Again, yours may have these in different positions, or it may have a different way of selecting stitches. It really just depends on your machine. So I really recommend checking out the manual. But some things are the same across all machines, or at least very similar. So I've got the knob on the side, just the same, and that controls the needle. I've got the thread up top and the bobbin winder over here. I've got a little diagram that shows you how to thread it for winding your bobbin. This one shows both. So basically, this one shows a dotted line essentially for winding the bobbin and a solid line for threading it normally. So same sort of thing. Thread goes through a little hook here. You can't see the thread very well because it's white, but it's going through the hook at the top, and then it comes around under that arm, and then it comes down and around the arm again, and then down into the needle. This one has a few more features, so it's actually got a speed. So you can actually basically set a maximum speed for your sewing, which can be helpful if you're first starting out, because it can feel like you're kind of out of control and going too fast. So you can slow it all the way down, speed it up, or somewhere in the middle just by sliding this little knob. It also has buttons for reverse. Instead of a lever, there's just a button. This one puts the needle down automatically, and this one will lift the needle up automatically. Another thing I should have shown you on the other machine as well, and they're always in a slightly different position. So again, kind of look at your machine, look at your manual. There is a lever that moves the foot up and down. So I can put it down into position when I'm ready to sew, and lift it up and out of the way when I need to, remove the fabric, or when you're putting it in, or whatever. You always have to have the foot down when you start to sew, otherwise it'll get jammed and it'll just be weird and it will not work right. So on a computerized machine like this, it will actually beep at me and it will tell me that the foot is not in the correct position. So if I press on the presser foot, it beeps at me and it says, no, you can't sew right now, the foot's not down, so don't do that. So when I put it down, it will go. So that can be handy. Normally it's pretty easy just to see, that the presser foot is up or down, but sometimes if you're using very thick materials, it can be all the way up under the presser foot, even when it's technically up. So it can be harder to tell. So just double check that your presser foot is down. Again, the lever tends to be in different places on each machine. On the other one, it's actually around the back here. So just pay attention to that. Again, check your manual if you're confused about where it is, but it should be pretty easy to spot if you kind of look all around the machine. This one also has a needle threader. I do not use this. I just thread it myself, but it's there, feature. And the other reason I wanted to show you this one is because this is top loading. So this is a different style of bobbin than the other one. And I think the top loading is a bit more common. It's really hard to say. I kind of tend to prefer it, but they're just different styles and different personal preferences. So this one has a little case that kind of sits down inside the thing here, and you can access it from the top. There's a little button over here that pops out this cover. Don't lose this, by the way. And then the bobbin nests down in here. So I will show you, once again, there is a diagram here for loading in the bobbin thread. There's little arrows on the plastic itself. Tells you exactly what to do. But effectively, what it's telling you is you want to have the bobbin with the thread going counterclockwise around. You're going to set it down in here and then pull the thread so that it hooks under this little part here, comes around, and then it just kind of nests into this area. And then the same way as before, I'm going to kind of hold on to the top thread while turning the wheel on the side. I'm going to grab that bobbin thread and pull it through up to the top, and then you can grab it and pull it the rest of the way through. And then it's ready to go. Before you sew, you do want to put the cover back on, and it just snaps into place. They are also, of course, different for cleaning. So this one has a little panel here that if you push the button over here, it will pop this whole panel off. You can get in there to kind of clean the lint out. The other one, you can just kind of open the little door, and you can pull out all the pieces of that bobbin case to oil it, clean it, whatnot. So yeah, that's just a little bit about sewing machines in general and how to get started with it, how to get set up. I hope that helps a little bit, kind of demystify, because I know sewing machines can be very intimidating. The other thing I think I talk about in the video, but I will say it again here just in case, is that a lot of the time it feels very frustrating when your machine jams and you don't know why, you don't know what you did. It just doesn't work, and it sucks. The first thing to know is that it's called a jam whenever a sewing machine doesn't work properly. You know, when you're getting that nest of threads, when it's just not wanting to sew correctly, it's called a jam. And that is when you search, like, why is my sewing machine jamming? It'll come up with a lot better results than why is my sewing machine not doing the thing, you know? The main thing to remember is that 9 times out of 10, you can fix a jam just by rethreading it. Just take the thread all the way out, put it back in, and try again. If that's still not working, you may consider that you have some lint under here. You need to clean out your sewing machine. I do that either with a little brush or with Q-tips to kind of go in there and grab the lint. And you also may need to oil your machine. There is specific sewing machine oil that you can buy at the craft store, and that will help keep your machine running. If all of that does not work, you know, you've checked your tension, tried everything, you may need to actually take it in to be professionally tuned up. There are sewing machine repair shops that will help with that. All right, so that is it. This was the final chapter in the beginner sewing series. I hope you learned something and that it helps you get started sewing. If you have any questions about anything, feel free to leave them in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.